Hey everybody, Raul here for Bass Musician Magazine, and today we have the extraordinary honor and pleasure of chatting with bassist, composer, and founding member of Naughty Professor, Noah Young. Yay!
Hey Raul, thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure, Noah, my pleasure. So, as always, we've got exciting stuff to talk about. You have a new solo album recently released, Noah. But before we get into some of that fun stuff, let's talk about the past. How did you get started in music and particularly on bass?
Let's see, as a kid in fourth grade, which is when my school introduced the option of playing an instrument, I chose trumpet and I played it for like 2 months and I sucked and I hated it. So then I stopped and then I started playing snare drum and I played drums for a few years before getting a bass for Christmas when I was 12.
Okay.
And so I've been playing bass since I was 12. I'm 34 now, so it's been 22 years. I continued playing drums until I was about like 17, and I was kind of doing both instruments. And then around 16, 17, I was like, okay, I need to focus on one. I'm going to focus on bass. So I've been really, fully a bass player since then, I would say.
Nice. And are you self-taught or did you pursue further studies?
I've had lots of great teachers over my life. I grew up in Vermont and I had a couple really awesome teachers there in middle school and high school, like particularly on bass, and then some other teachers like at school that weren't bass players but who I learned a lot from. And when I was 19, I moved to New Orleans to study jazz at Loyola University.
Okay.
And I've been in New Orleans ever since. It's been like 15 years. I did a couple semesters at Loyola, and then I left because it didn't really seem to be in line with what I wanted to do. I ended up transferring to University of New Orleans and studying there with Steve Mazakowski and Brian Seeger and a bunch of really amazing musicians. They really have had, and I believe still have, an incredible music program at University of New Orleans. I've also studied with an amazing bass player, Chris Severin, for years in New Orleans independently. I actually just saw him last night, but he's played with Dr. John and Alan Toussaint and the Neville Brothers and Ellis Marsalis and basically everyone from New Orleans over the past 50 years. Yeah, I think that's it.
Nice. Well, and New Orleans is certainly one of I'd call it a musical hub in the country because, when you think about music, you think Nashville, New York City, LA. There's like Seattle's got its own scene, but New Orleans has got, and it's not all jazz, but you are within kind of in the realm of jazz, funk. So you're kind of perfectly situated there.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really amazing city and has been very welcoming of me. And also, I think the way the city operates is kind of works well with how I like to live my life. People are incredibly down to earth, and compared to bigger cities, they're more living in the moment and enjoying themselves and less like focused on just getting ahead at all times. It's really nice to live in a place like that. It also means, or I feel like it means, if you do work hard, you stand out a little more because there's a lot of people who are maybe not working so hard. And yeah, I do play a lot of like jazz adjacent music. I've hardly ever swing, but I play a lot of like funk fusion, jazz fusion. So that's been a big part of the music I've been making in my career the last 15 years or so.
Nice, nice. Well, and again, when you talk about some of the big cities, especially like New York, it's so challenging and cutthroat that it's a city that can chew musicians up and spit them right out. And there's even books specifically for bass players, how to succeed at being a bass player in New York City, because
Wow.
it
I didn't
is
know
so,
that.
oh, it's crazy. And, and a big part of it is even just behavioral kind of thing. Like the first thing they're going is like, don't be abrasive, have reliable gear. Don't show up and your amp is, you're blown out or something, all of these little kind of the common sense kind of things, but apparently they've had to spell it out because it's not everybody got the memo, I guess, when they got started. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and I'm glad you mentioned that because that's another really amazing thing about New Orleans is how welcoming the music community is, and it does not feel competitive. It does not feel cutthroat. Like when I first got on the scene here, people were like, "Oh, you're a bass player? Let me get your phone number because I might need you to sub for me."
Yeah.
Or I might need you to play with my band when my bass player is busy. And that was a really just amazing to like not feel intimidated and to feel like, oh, like people are actually glad that I'm here, as opposed to a bigger city where, or even some smaller cities, just where it's more cutthroat and people look at you like competition or like, I don't really want to get to know you.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. So as we continue on, Noah just released September. We're speaking in 2025, so September 26th, solo album. Tell us about this. This is always a big milestone in any musician's career.
Yeah, this has definitely been a big milestone for me. I've been leading my own band for about 10 years. Yeah, I think. Yeah. And like about when I graduated from college, I decided, I want to have my own group. Initially, it was a trio. I want to book some little gigs around town and just have another creative outlet that I'm in control of so I can fit it around my, at the time, touring schedule. So I've been doing that for the last 10 years. Before this album, I've released 2 full-length albums and 1 EP. So this is far from my first release as a band leader, but it is the first time I worked with a producer. I worked with the amazing Jameson Ross, drummer for Snarky Puppy. He's currently on the road with Boz Scaggs. He also has his own music. Also a Grammy Award-winning producer. He just won a Grammy last year for producing Avery Sunshine's album. And I've known him for some years, but working with him was really incredible. Working with a producer in general was really incredible. That's not something I realized. I hadn't realized until a few years ago how powerful that can be, to like have that relationship and that sense of trust and to take the weight of responsibility off of my shoulders, It's the first time I didn't really do it on the cheap. Like my other records I've done at like friends' studios, gotten a really, really good rate. I've had the people in my band play on them and like didn't pay them very much, And this time, I mean, Jameson was more serious about like, hey, even if they're your friends, you want to respect their time. You want to pay them well. Like you need to have a real budget for this, and you need to save up money to make this happen the right way.
Gotcha.
And of course, I still would have loved to spend 5 times as much money on the record, but it was a more like professionally done project from beginning to end, I would say. Yeah, I worked with an amazing engineer, Mac Major, who's a good friend of mine, but also just an incredible engineer, mixer, producer. He's also recently won a couple Grammy Awards for things he's engineered, and he was a big part of it the whole time. He was in the studio recording everything. He mixed the record, he mastered the record. I guess the other thing to add is the other records I'd made were like, I have my band and we're going to go in and play our songs in the studio the way we play them live. For this record, only one of the like 10 songs on the record had ever been played live before we recorded it.
Wow.
Most of them were demos that I made at home during the pandemic. And Jameson felt very strongly like, this is your record. You need to be in the forefront. Like you're playing the melodies, you're taking a lot of the solos, like even if it makes you uncomfortable, it's about you and people want to hear you, even if you don't, basically. So, the other records I have made had horn sections and like mostly the other people soloed. But on this one, the focus was very much on me.
Nice. Well, and I find that especially finding a good engineer that knows how to put bass in the forefront is oftentimes a challenge, because I'll get an album to listen to where it's got an amazing bass player, but the engineer has mixed them down and highlighted the horns or highlighted a lead guitar or highlighted something else, which maybe for the general population, that's what you're supposed to do. But, when it's your album, I mean, people really should hear you instead of just everybody else. Now, I'm glad you mentioned your band. Are those your same musicians? It's a 4-piece band that you guys have that started about 10 years ago, you mentioned?
Yeah, so I think it was 2015 that I started the band. The keyboard player, Sam Cuslin, has been playing with me the entire time. The drummer, Alfred Jordan, was at first a sub, and then in, I think, 2021, the drummer I'd been using since my band started, Walter Lundy, moved out of New Orleans and he moved to Houston. So then I asked Alfred to be the main drummer in my band. So he was a sub for years, and now he's been the main drummer for the last 4 years. And then actually on the record, we also had Shea Pierre, who's another amazing keyboard player in New Orleans. He played some other keyboards. He also played a bunch of key bass, the synth bass you hear on the record. And then the guitar on the record, initially we weren't going to have guitar. But after we recorded it, Jameson said, like, I'm really hearing guitar on a lot of these songs. And he wanted to bring in John Maestas, who's not, usually I have Max Bronstein playing with my band. But John is another amazing guitarist who I've known for about 10 years. He really specializes in doing things that don't sound like guitar on guitar. He uses a lot of really wild effects and some really pretty crazy techniques that I've never really seen anyone else use. He has like a flamenco background, and he'll use some kind of flamenco finger picking techniques in like rock and jazz in a really cool way. So he was the guitarist on the record. So yeah, normally a 4-piece band live. On the record, it was a 5-piece band with a different guitarist. But, for the most part, it's mostly the same personnel.
Gotcha. Well, and of course, as most bass players, I can't help but to notice a bass on the wall and Aguilar picture. So we should probably ask how you get your sound. What gear are you playing on?
Oh, yeah. So I've been playing this Sire bass, this Marcus Miller Sire 5-string bass for the last 9 years. I was playing a Fender Jazz bass, the one that's on the wall before that, but it just kept buzzing. And anytime I played in a big room, it would buzz, and the people in my band hated it, and the sound engineers hated it. So when I got this Sire, it's just silent, no buzz. At least there's no buzz if you have it in the middle. If you go to one pickup or the other, then it does buzz a little bit. But that's been kind of my workhorse almost the last decade. Most of the record I recorded on that. I did also play some 4-string P bass with flat wounds for some of the more low subby parts. And I also did play my Music Man 5-string Stingray on a couple of the songs. And I've been endorsed by Aguilar for the last 9 years, using a tone hammer amp, and I got one of their 410 cabs and also one of their 112 cabs. Though I'm trying to remember, in the studio, I don't actually remember if we set up a bass amp. Mac, the engineer I work with, usually says I get everything I need from a DI.
Yeah.
So it's possible there was a bass amp, but I can't actually remember.
Well, again, they're the two situations, because again, in the studio, if it's going straight to the board, they're getting all the sound, and a good engineer will work with what you're giving them. On stage, a lot of bands are getting away from using amps because of just the logistics of lugging them in and loading and unloading and carrying them around. And so unless they want to feel the air being pushed around them, kind of the golden era of giant towers of cabs and amps is dwindling, because nobody wants to go through the hassle. And again, if you're a city musician, especially folks in New York City, if you have to carry your gear all over town, the last thing you want is to be lugging a cab and other things. So the smaller you can get away with is always going to be better. And as we age, light is an advantage. Our backs don't hold up as well as they used to when we're absolutely really, really young. But you don't have to worry about that for a while yet.
Yeah, but even at 34, I'm still, noticing the effects of aging.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah, I've been using the Aguilar Superlight series for 10 years, the cabs, and those are amazing. I mean, I have the 410, but I've probably only played it on one gig in New Orleans in the last year. Most of the bigger rooms have a backline amp, like a 610 or an 810. And I work a lot, it depends. But last week I had 9 gigs,
Oh, wow.
So it's frequently 2 or 3 in one day. So it's I'm trying to, convenience and being realistic are very important to me. So I'm usually trying to bring some small stuff, just like my 112 cab and the tone hammer, which is in total about 30 pounds. It's really pretty reasonable.
Well, and as you're mentioning all this working and stuff, what plans do you have for the future? What's in the works? The album release? You planning on doing any touring with this, or what do you have going on?
Let's see. Mostly I'm in New Orleans. I did a lot of touring between 2013 and like 2020 with Naughty Professor,
Hmm.
a band I started in 2010 in college with a bunch of friends. We toured, I mean, eventually all over the world, but we were in a van with a trailer all over the US for years, doing maybe close to 100 dates in certain years. And that really wore me out. Also, just financially, it was a struggle because we were trying to build the band and make it a business that could support us. That never happened. So it's definitely, and New Orleans is a great place to work as a musician. There's a lot of work here
Hmm.
between clubs, festivals, weddings, church gigs. You know, there's a big gospel music scene. A lot of people come here to get married. And there's like this time of year, there's festivals every single weekend. Like I've played a festival almost every weekend for the last 6 weeks. So I'm spending a lot of time in New Orleans these days. I do tour with David Shaw, who's a singer of the band The Revivalists, and he
Okay.
has a solo project that I tour with. So anytime he does something, I'm out with him. That's really the main person I'm touring with. I do want to do a little touring with my own group, which will probably be a trio.
Mm.
Probably will go up to the East Coast this coming summer and do some shows in Vermont,
Okay.
where I'm from, where I still have some connections. I would really love to go to Europe. I did go to France with my trio in 2019, but then the pandemic really seemed to kind of like mess up international travel. At least I haven't been traveling internationally nearly as much in the last 5 years. So I would say I have some ambition, but also I know how difficult it is to tour, how much work it is, and how hard it is to actually come home with any money. So
Gotcha.
I'm also trying to be realistic about, like I wanted to do the album. The album was my passion project. I don't need to do a passion tour necessarily.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, it is interesting because, especially with you being kind of jazz funk fusion adjacent there, Europe is very friendly to that kind of music. However, again, the logistics and getting around and it is I think the a lot of people think of the glamour of being on stage and don't realize all of the work that happens behind the scenes. So you could be on stage for a couple of hours, but there's 22 other hours in the day that you have you're having to navigate. And so it is exhausting. And it really I can see where there's folks that would go, if I've got a lot going on around me, I'd just as soon stay here. And or like in LA, a lot of people will prefer to do studio work and never go anywhere because you've got plenty of stuff to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Gotcha.
mean, I've been very fortunate to do some really cool tours with Naughty Professor. Right before the pandemic, we went to China. We played at the Blue Note in Shanghai and the Blue Note in Beijing. We did a few European tours where we've been to like Spain, Italy, France, Norway, Switzerland. And I actually just this past summer I went to Morocco. I
Hmm.
have a very good friend in New Orleans is this guitar player from Morocco named Mahmoud Shouki, and he curated a festival in Casablanca. And actually, me and Alfred and Sam, basically my trio, went to play with him in June of this year. I love to travel, but mostly I'm hoping other people will call me to do it these days than for me to be the one initiating it and doing all the legwork.
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, and if people want to know where you are or what you're up to or what's in the works, where's the best place for them to look?
Really, the best place is probably my Instagram. My handle is Noah Young Bass. That's where I'm posting the most frequently and have the most updates.
Hmm.
But I also have my own website, noahyoungbass.com, that has, the bigger picture stuff on it. Yeah, I would say those are the best two options. For anyone out there in New Orleans or coming to New Orleans, I play every Sunday night with my trio at Bacchanal Wine Bar.
Okay.
So we're there on Sunday nights. And yeah, those are probably the best ways to keep up with me.
Very nice. Well, Noah, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to share all of your insights. Again, congratulations on Noah. Folks, check out this new album just released this last September. You're seeing him here on Bass Musician Magazine, Noah Young.
Thank you so much for having me, Raul. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
My pleasure.